last session, but we're still going to have office hours open. So as you think about moving forward in your plans and the kind of homework, thinking about getting started, we are happy to help. Uh, let's see. I think we're going to let Lydia jump in, and just a reminder about the Green Communities Challenge.
Yeah, so as you may have seen, the Michigan Green Communities Challenge is now open and it will be open till May 1. But even if you're not ready to submit, now is a good time to try your login, see if you remember your password, and if you don't, we can help you reset it and access your account. Um, and you can also get points for sustainable purchasing actions, like we talked about at the last session. Um, just by participating in this cohort, you can say you're in progress towards those sustainable purchasing actions and get a couple extra points. And yeah, MGC contacts, you can contact myself or Shanna Draheim, who's also here, or just info@mygreencommunities.com. And Danielle will be back next month. So she'll also be able to, I mean, if you email any of us, we'll get your question answered. So don't worry about who's the right person to reach out to. But yeah, and then also registration for the My Healthy Climate Conference just opened up last week, I think. So make sure to register for that. We sent out an email yesterday with the free registration code. So take a look at that. If you have any questions, again, reach out. But yeah, I think that's it.
Oh, that's awesome, Lydia. Yeah, I just registered because it sells out quick. And Sarah, while we're here, just Shanna heads the policy group for our Michigan Municipal League, and Lydia works with Michigan Green Communities, and MML has been the um, home of Michigan Green Communities for since almost its inception, and really helped it grow. And I think 64 different communities participated, and those are cities, counties, townships, villages, um, and state of Michigan is now Eagle funds it. Economic Development Corporation in Michigan chips in on this. Um, so it's been a very successful, you know, program to kind of move cities along on their sustainability journey. So um, the just Sarah didn't have the context, I don't think, of who was running this cohort. So with that, a reminder, you can go to Calendly, Matt Nod, or you can just reach out to me directly. You guys all have my email on the calendar invites. So here's our agenda for today. Um, we're going to start with Sarah. And Sarah is a leader in the national effort here and works with Safer States. And we thought it would be interesting, now that you've gotten through this much of the program, to hear more about what's going on at the national level and how the work, your boots on the ground work at the local level, fits in this bigger picture, maybe some of the national trends that are going on. We'll have some time for questions and answers with Sarah, and then we're going to give her a chance to get on with her work. We're going to walk through the training, how we got here, what we did over the last 4 sessions, take a little break, and then the last part of today will be um, talking about the homework. Where are you going to be starting on your sustainable purchasing journey? Learning from each other as we report out on that. We did create a little space because at our last meeting, we talked about if you have any upcoming RFPs or, purchases that you think you could use a little advice to kind of green them, we would be available to talk about that. Then we have a survey trying to get some feedback on the training, and we're going to let you take that while we're together. and then just close out in the last 10 minutes. Any questions about the agenda? Or Tracy, anything to add that I've missed?
Sounds good, Matt.
So with that, I want to introduce Sarah Dahl, who's been a huge champion in this getting toxics out of purchasing, and a real thought leader in this space, and a big supporter of the work that the Ecology Center is doing. And again, we just thought it would be great for you to hear a little bit about her work and the work that's going on and what the trends are, and then have a little opportunity to talk. So with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing and let
me share.
Yeah.
Well, let me do that. All right. Hopefully you can see that. Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. I would just say, Tracy and Matt and the Ecology Center are national leaders in this. So, they really are the ones. You guys are lucky from a Michigan perspective to have such great resources on the ground. So just to, and we have a long and deep partnership with Ecology Center and folks for years and years and years, because Safer States, hopefully I can actually make this work, is a national alliance of environmental health organizations and coalitions across the nation. And really, we lean into state leadership. And so really, it's a bubble up, bubble down kind of organization. It's not about here, everyone's going to do this, but rather what is bubbling up from the ground? How does that resonate with what is happening elsewhere? And how can we then work collectively and strategically to actually get protections of public health and communities by transitioning away from harmful towards better, and knowing what is actually better, and then holding those who've caused the harm accountable for the harm they've created. And we really come through a toxics lens, and toxics are as a health problem, and so we don't have a government system and corporations who really frame around chemical safety. And as a result, there are lots of loopholes. And as a result, there's lots of contamination and exposure to communities, and particularly those who are most vulnerable. And we come to that through that particular lens, both those who live downstream from facilities, as well as those who are just particularly vulnerable because of their biology, those who are young, older, et cetera. Our approach, we really believe deeply that states and local governments can lead the way to safer chemicals and materials, that governments have a role in the solution. We have deep partnership with allies. We're active in, 18 to 20 different states, but also we have over 80 different organizations from around the country who are working together to try and address PFAS chemicals, and I'll come to them. So just looking for ways to synergize activities at all different levels of government and action, but also thinking about market campaigns and market strategies, because we really believe that policy and market campaigning go hand in hand, that if you create the space for the market to move and the pressure, that the market moves, and that creates more space for policy actions. So really looking for synergies. And so the architecture we move is like, we want to know what is in stuff, what are those chemicals safe or not. We don't know often, that we're regulating on the basis of the class and how harmful they are, not how much poison is okay. So it's not a risk frame. We want to eliminate the worst of those, incentivize solutions, which is really where procurement comes in. How can we make it so we're buying better and buying safer? And we want to secure the resources for cleanup and support communities. So where's the momentum? Really, I think there's a sort of this bigger narrative that's happening around, like, how do we shift to better, what is safer, more sustainable, climate and toxic safe, so we're not getting this world of regrettable substitution is burgeoning, where it's like, well, if we eliminate, and my example would be, as states on the ground were moving to push away from PFAS and food packaging, all the compostables in the marketplace at the time were coated in PFAS. But as that push was happening, the folks who were pushing away from single-use disposable plastics were pushing towards compostables as a solution. So as a result, you had sort of a conflict of moving away from plastics and moving away from toxics combining. And so the step back was, what is a better system? And so that has increased the pressure for things like non-toxic reuse and building out reuse infrastructure that doesn't push into each other. So there's momentum on PFAS, on plastics, and then in different sectors, personal care products, packaging, cleaning products, and furniture, all of which are part of the procurement universe. To just highlight PFAS, which Michigan is an epicenter of the PFAS crisis nationally, and sort of was really in a leadership role in thinking about what do we do with this problem and crisis. These are the chemicals that are nonstick. They're called forever chemicals. I want to highlight this because, the climate lens, F gases, which are a part of the class, are major greenhouse gas contributors. So this is, again, where sort of that climate toxics interface is very visible. But Michigan was the first to adopt an executive order in purchasing to say, we, the state, want to move away from the purchase of PFAS in products. And other states followed your lead. Colorado, Washington, Minnesota adopted similar policies. And then the federal government with, again, Becca Munich, who used to be with the Ecology Center, and I helped create some knowledge base amongst those in the federal arena. They adopted an executive order that directed the federal government in cleaning products used in federal buildings that they could not have PFAS in them. And so then it pointed at certifications like Safer Choice, which again, sort of in the procurement space. So it's just a very clear example of where Michigan leadership, but also state and local based leadership that helped create the bubble up for that was important nationally. And what this slide is just, I'm not going to go through all of this, but that all happened in a bigger context of what was happening on PFAS. PFAS is not just in the purchasing space, it is all over. And part of the momentum for that is because states and local jurisdictions are having to deal with the cost of the contamination. And as a result of those costs, you're having litigation, you have drinking water standards, you have restrictions on the chemicals. Retailers and the market is moving also because of both the liability, and they don't want to be part of causing the problem. So there is just a tremendous amount of momentum on PFAS right now. There's also a tremendous amount of momentum around plastics, and plastics are primarily fossil fuel based. They contain lots of toxic additives. And so you're also seeing momentum both in the purchasing space around single-use disposable, but also in the policy space, like skip the stuff, which means they don't automatically give out forks and knives when you go to take out. Truth in labeling, that if it's recyclable, it says labeled recyclable, it actually has to be recyclable, which just changes the narrative and the understanding of the plastics problem. But just again in that there's this space that's burgeoning around investing in reuse and reuse infrastructure, which again goes to sort of the purchasing universe. But there's also this bubble up undertone, which I think is important, thinking about it from a jurisdictional perspective, which is we are where we were 5 years ago on PFAS. PFAS science is increasingly strong about the harm that is caused. Microplastics and nanoplastics, that science we know it's in us, we know it's in things. And then the next step of we're just seeing the science emerge on, and this is causing harm, not just ick. That is going to continue in an increasingly large way, which is going to create pressure on the whole system to move away from plastics, think about microplastics, and then think about what's better. Again, where do we move? Do we need it? First question. And if we need it, what's a better place? The other piece of that is, as there's more pressure in the marketplace, you end up with more cost competitive solutions because there are just more solutions in the marketplace. It's not like you have to buy the most expensive thing in order to solve the problem. It is then there is more in the marketplace. Like with PFAS and food packaging, there is more PFAS-free food packaging in the market, or toxic-free food packaging in the marketplace now. So when you go to contract, there are more entities that can compete for those contracts than there used to be. Packaging, again, this is sort of just the reinforcement, like on plastics, packaging has the most momentum right now with certifications coming online. Personal care products is another sector where there's a lot of momentum. It's less as much, I think, in terms of the on the ground purchasing, but it's there. Similar, like with personal care products, I didn't do a slide on cleaning products. That's the other one which has more of an overlap with procurement. Bottom line is the states are regulating, markets are moving, which again creates more space in the marketplace for companies to provide products for contracts that actually are better. And the certifications space is also burgeoning in this. So when it's sort of asked in a big picture, I would strongly encourage folks to adopt sort of that broad architecture that holds your sustainable purchasing strategy, but then pick some things to do first. What are your first contracts? What do you move on where there's already this momentum? Because it both provides you with the political momentum, which can be challenged sometimes within jurisdictions, but and like states and local jurisdictions are all having to deal with like the PFAS crisis. So how do it sets you up for a dynamic where we're part of the solution in a way. And as I said, they're just more cost competitive solutions in the marketplace. And it also gives you the potential to be successful early, and success breeds success. And I just want to totally reinforce the leadership of Ecology Center, and the tools and resources that have been put together are not just valuable for Michigan, but nationally. Everybody looks like, oh, hey, great. We know the listing of the different certifications that are PFAS free, that are moving in these different directions, is incredibly useful for jurisdictions, and I encourage you to look to those. So I would just lift up, we have this friggin' awesome bill tracker, and I know, but I got my staff, Eddie, who like runs this, which just love it, and I love him. But this is just a way, if you're like, wait, who's working, has anyone acted on, is anyone restricting, is anyone trying to create something? This bill tracker lives on our website, and it just can make it easier for you to be like, oh, look, 10 states have, or other places have, which can also be part of the way that it makes it more approachable to folks, where you're like, oh my gosh, we're not the only ones doing this or trying to do this as we move forward. So just highlight that as a tool, and then that's it. That's what I have to share with you. And I'm happy to dig in. I mean, there's other sectors like furniture, which I know that Ecology Center has moved, and that was more of an earlier policy fights. But as a result of earlier policy fights, there's just more availability in the marketplace of products that are less toxic.
Thank
that
you,
helpful?
Sarah. Go
Thanks.
ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, I was just going to add on that furniture point that Michigan is the center of institutional furniture manufacturing in the country. And so we've got the Herman Millers and the Hayworths and the steel cases and all seating and on and on and on, on the west side of the state. And actually, the institutional furniture manufacturers have been way ahead of other sectors in on sustainability and on toxic chemicals. And so, and partly because of their own history, and partly because architects and designers have been really driving this a lot, and they require a lot of information. So we have an amazing amount of information about what's in furniture, especially institutional furniture. And there's so many options now that are PFAS free, flame retardant free, antimicrobials free, PVC free. I mean, so we have all that on our website, but I just wanted to highlight this special place that Michigan has. There's even the secondary market has got a lot of those Herman Miller and Hayworth that, like less expensive versions of them. So that's just something to know, that there's a lot of availability of safer furnishings in this area. But maybe I'll jump in with a question for you, Sarah. And that is to talk a little bit about, we haven't talked that much about what a market campaign is with this group, and maybe just give an example of that. And then I want to circle back and talk a little bit more about plastics, but maybe that's the question for you. Just, what, if you want to share a little bit about that.
Sure. So, Safer allies very closely with an entity called Mind the Store, which is trying to put pressure on the top retailers in the country to adopt safer chemical strategies. So we've partnered with them on campaigns like putting pressure on REI to eliminate the use of PFAS in textiles sold at REI stores, or another PFAS one was related to food packaging. And so putting pressure on Burger King and McDonald's to eliminate the use of PFAS in their food packaging. Going back further, again, on the flame retardants, it was putting pressure on, oh my gosh, I've totally now just had the moment of spacing the giant, oh my gosh, it's not, well, Sally Beauty would be a target for personal care products. There's a very large furniture manufacturer associated with Berkshire Hathaway. Oh my gosh, I'm totally spacing on their name. It'll come
I'm not
back
sure who it is.
after I get off the call. But anyway,
Yeah,
there
no
was
worries.
it was a big campaign or a big pressure point around when we were trying to get flame retardants in particular and other chemicals of concern out of furniture, of which now again, I think thank you, Tracy, for lifting up Michigan leadership on but also just more broadly.
Mhm.
Creating the context in the space and then the push on the market. It was both the market then, because you had the market leaders come out and say, well, we can do this. It's not unachievable if we even need it. And in certain part of this, like flame retardants and PFAS in particular, they're not necessarily added because they enhance the function of the product. So the flame retardants, you didn't actually need them for fire safety. For PFAS, there are other ways to achieve, do you need, the wine spill to just pop off of the couch, or are there other ways to achieve that durability without toxic chemistry?
Yeah, as it turns out, both those things didn't work very well. The PFAS didn't work very well, and the flame retardants weren't needed. So, yeah. Well, thanks. That's helpful. It's just, I think, just to lift up the Mind the Store campaign, that's a campaign around all of these huge retailers that everybody is in every week, probably. Like all the major, you know, um, retailers and distributors, like from the Targets to the Costco's to, I mean, everything, right, is in this campaign that Safer States is working with to transform the products that we use every day. So thanks for that, Sarah.
Yeah.
See if there's other questions. One thing I also wanted to lift up from what you're saying is this intense focus on plastics right now. And all cities buy lots of things that are plastics and also single-use items. But as Sarah was saying, there's a lot of momentum. There's a global treaty being negotiated right now. And that has meant this flood of research on the health effects of plastics. And as Sarah said, it's just the beginning and it does not look good. So there's a number of ways in which there's the manufacture of plastics. A lot of it happens in Cancer Alley and in the primary ingredients to plastics happens in China, but in the US too. Then there's all plastics are essentially chemicals. They're petrochemicals and then hazardous chemicals. So there's that when they're added and then when we use them. And then when we dispose of them, one of the problems is they can break apart and become microplastics. And there's a lot of work going on in the Great Lakes right now. There's a Wayne State Research Consortium looking at microplastics in the Great Lakes. That's going to be very important. But as Sarah said, all of this research is coming out. So there was a very big and important study, for example, showing that we all have microplastics in us, but people who had microplastics in their arterial plaque had worse heart outcomes, including heart attacks. So that's just one example of like this is coursing through. I think it's like 0.1% by weight of our brains, microplastics. So this is coming, you know? And I
Right.
think Sarah's admonition that we are going to hear more and more about plastics, it's going to be important. And all the things that we can do at the state and city level, like, you know, eliminating unnecessary plastics, reducing plastics where we can, detoxifying plastics, those are going to become important things that I know you all will be hearing about at the city level.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to do my work. I'm just going to say that, just sort of like you walk into a room, they're like, oh gosh,
Here
Dr.
she
Dumas
comes.
is here. I don't necessarily want to hear that. But the positive side is there is real market transformation. There are those leaders in the marketplace who really do want to um, figure out a different ways of approaching it. And, right now we're in this super early adopter stage on some of these things. But, as evidenced by furniture, the market will shift. It just will. Same thing is happening, PFAS is further, in this place. So it was like furniture, PFAS, and plastics are here in terms of sort of market transformation. Um, and, it's because it's fossil fuels, again, there's that climate overlap with plastics.
That's also really important because so many cities already have climate action plans. And so much of the climate impacts are in the supply chain in what we buy. So different estimates, but maybe 70% of climate impacts are in the supply chain. So that climate link is really going to be critical to achieve climate goals.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned this before, but with cities trying to get off fossil fuels, there's been an effort to do energy efficiency, renewable energy, shift transportation fuels. But there's a whole effort to move all that virgin fossil fuel into new virgin plastics. And so if we're not paying attention to the plastic sides, we're not getting off fossil fuels. So anyway, just reiterating that I think we mentioned before. Anyone else have questions for Sarah? Sarah, we've got Mary's from Washtenaw County and Nico's from Northern Michigan, way up in the UP. And then I'm forgetting where Kim's from.
Mary invited me to join because I'm part of Washtenaw County as well.
Oh, perfect.
Nice to see you.
Lydia, Shanna, any questions? Otherwise, we can let Sarah get back. And Sarah, thank you so much. I always learn more every time we hear from you. And, we get caught up in our little bubble here in Michigan and with, some of our work. So it's just good to hear what's going on and also hear that our state's been doing some good things in this space and we can all at the local level help them. Well, great. Thank you again for your time and
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you all for your leadership. I'm is that you at the local level are really leaning in and trying to figure out what are the ways forward for your place. And I think that's just the most important step. So just really appreciate that. And thanks to Tracy and Matt for the invitation. And I'm happy to be a resource through Tracy and Matt in whatever way we can to support the work going forward. So thanks all. Have a good one.
bye,
Thanks, Sarah.
Sarah. All righty, we will get back. All right, everybody see that? So we're gonna quick run through how we got here. So
I'm going to do this first.
I
Session
think
one.
you're doing the first
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Yeah, and you're doing the next two. So in session one, we learned more about each other. And then we had everyone take a survey to understand your level of knowledge on sustainable purchasing and the kind of work you were already engaging in, We also asked about the level of support among leadership in your city and drivers for sustainability and a whole bunch of other things. So we then did a series of slides that provided an overview of sustainable purchasing, basically a 101 to introduce the concept. And I want to remind everybody that those slides are available for you to use, and they're part of our slide deck that we provide for you when you need to do persuasion in your city around sustainable purchasing. We then did a preliminary review of the results of the survey to help us understand how to shape the next 3 accelerator sessions. And then we gave you some homework. The first homework was to understand the way purchasing happens in your city and to identify an important RFPs coming up. So that was session 1. Matt, over to you.
Next, whoops, I got a jumpy finger. Checked in on your homework, and we started getting you all talking with each other about what's going on in your community, how things work. We went back over that survey, kind of helping guide us in what kind of information we could bring into this. Had a little break, made sure folks could sign up for office hours. Then we talked about how ready is your community and where could you start in this journey. We, again, building on this work we've done with other Great Lakes cities, folks were asking for kind of stock language that could be used in city plans, whether it's master plans, sustainability plans, resilience plans, zero waste plans. We think there's room for sustainable purchasing in all of those. And so, I mean, that's something that Nico is looking at because of some work going on in Marquette County. How can they kind of build this into a document and a planning process that's already underway? So we looked at some of that draft language, talked about how to work with boards and commissions if your city council is not ready or county commission isn't ready to just pass something. And then we talked about homework. Pick one key next step and think about your pitch, your 3 to 5 minute pitch to your colleagues, council members, elected leadership on why sustainable purchasing is important in your community. And then this last time, we heard directly from a practitioner in Michigan, Lori Welch. We got some time with her talking about her journey, getting a policy passed, taking a couple of years to really get ready to do implementation, but then they've created online training, gotten a lot of good feedback, especially on just this conversation about sustainable purchasing has really engaged staff, and they're now bringing ideas to her. So we did some report out on the homework, some big ideas. You were all very brave to do your pitch sessions for us, get some feedback from your peers. And then Tanya was able to guide us through the Ecology Center roadmap and that kind of collection of information that we're hoping a month from now, 2 months from now, when some RFP comes up, you were go to the website and find some of these resources and guides that can make it easier for your staff and your colleagues to put the right specifications in their RFPs. We also talked about vendors and vendor disclosure and a tool that we're developing with Lansing that any of you can pilot, where vendors have to acknowledge in writing that they've read your policy and they're only providing you with materials and products that meet your specifications. So hopefully that kind of suite of tools and information, again, 2-3 months from now, when all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think we could use specifications, we can, you've got a place to go that's going to make it easier for you and your colleagues. All right, Tracy, you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So as Matt was just saying, we have this whole host of resources, but we wanted to go through and remind you again of it, and then I'm going to put something in the chat. But just to remind you, there's a roadmap to help develop and implement a sustainable purchasing policy. There are fact sheets for 10 high volume product categories that provide a rationale for why to focus in that area and a summary of solutions, benefits, and tools. So those are just kind of the brief pieces. There are also fact sheets on things like third-party certifications and PFAS certifications, as Sarah just mentioned. In addition, the third bar is there's a database of 14 different product categories with detailed advice to help you develop benchmarks and goals. This is a purchasing resources database. It also includes suggested specifications, as Matt just said, to adopt for each product category. The categories include cleaning products, building materials, food serviceware, firefighting foams, office supplies, IT equipment, printing, pest management, appliances, lighting, interior furnishings, carpets and flooring, playgrounds and sports fields, road surfaces, and green fleets, among others. So the link is on the screen. I'm also going to put it in the chat. So that's just a quick spin again to remind you that all those things are available and all open, an open website.
All right, with that, couple of questions for you. We are going to be taking the Lansing training, and right now that's kind of owned by Lansing and can only be used by Lansing staff. We can't offer that to you, except we built the intellectual property. So Tracy and I and Tanya are in a position where we can take that and put it on a new platform that's potentially more open and available for you as other users. So we're hoping to get that done in the next 3 to 6 months. And then we're hoping we'd be interested if any of you or staff might be interested in being beta testers as we bring that training to a new platform. So what I would say is just if you're interested, just put it in the chat that, we're free to reach out to you.
We may reach out to you anyway.
Yes,
Great,
now
right.
that we're among friends. But it'd be great to know in advance if you think you'd be interested. The other question, Tracy and I, were talking about is, would it be helpful to check in 6 months and just say, how you doing? Anything we could do? Anything you're finding that's a barrier that we might be able to do a little bit of one-on-one coaching? So we were thinking about, maybe a 40-minute session 6 months from now. So again, if you think that would be of interest, put that in the chat and we can, again, we might invite you anyway, if we decide to do this, but just putting it out there, want to get a feel for whether that kind of 6-month check-in would be of interest to you. And if there's anything,
can I just
go ahead,
come
Mary.
off? I was started typing and then I was like, this is just going to be easier if I say it. I can definitely, so I can see that being helpful. I just 6 months, like it sounds really far away, but
Too long.
knowing the pace at which things move at the county, I can see it being like, well, we haven't really actually made a whole lot of progress, and it might, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just hard for me to say, like, I don't want you to waste your time setting something up because I say, yeah, that would be really useful. And then in 6 months, it's like, well, actually, we need another 6 months, if that makes sense.
Well,
So
and
just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and absolutely. And we don't want to waste your time either. So if it's better to do it a year out, because then the other thing we're wondering is, is there a like 2.0 version of this where we talk about, okay, you're up and running. How do you track progress? How do you do some of those other things that we have some thoughts on, but that was kind of a little too advanced for where, you know, folks just starting out are. Let's get started and then talk about that down the road. So I would just say if you think you might be interested in something down the road once your program's up and running, you know, that's something to reach out to us. You can see where we are in our ability to get, you know, with Tracy and I, we get funding from philanthropy and things like that, whether MML and green communities, you know, there's kind of an advanced purchasing. We can talk about that. But there's a couple different opportunities to potentially get you all back together. So,
Maybe we should say something like 8 months. So it's not a full year, which seems like a long, something, in between a little bit, or 9 months.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're only one organization, obviously, so take it with a
Mhm.
grain of salt, but I'm just thinking like, so we applied for a CLC fellow to help us with our policy and procedures and kind of like flushing it out and revamping it and all of that. But that if we got a fellow, they wouldn't even start until the summer, and then it's a 3-month fellowship. So I can see like from my perspective, yeah, like 8 months would be great. Like, where are we now that I mean, assuming hopefully we get a fellow and get through that part of it. Yeah, like where are we now? Okay, now we're ready. We have the policy. We've got it
right.
passed and developed and the procedures and all of that. What next?
Maybe we should think about that then, about that time frame. And we may be in touch sooner on the training, which would be helpful, I think, as people continue to develop activities in their cities. So,
Oops. All right.
okay, yeah.
I think we'll take a little break and then we're, I think, a little ahead of schedule, which is good. So let me just double check. 1:47, a little before 2, we'll get back together and start talking about any best practices you have. So, during the survey, a bunch of you said, well, we are doing this, this, and this already. So we'd like to hear what is working that you've already started, if there, and then we've got a super small group, so we'll just see how it goes. And then talk about next steps in your homework. So see you in a bit. Just checking the weather. I may drive up north tonight.
I said, what's it look like?
So far it looks clear, just clear and
Mhm.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard your voice, so I came to say hi, but I
Yeah.
can't stay.
Beth and I got to sit next to each other yesterday at a Ann Arbor climate resilience event. So
Oh, nice.
uh,
Anyway, that's all. I just was walking by and I heard you, and I was like, "Is that Matt Nod?" And it is yet again.
He's everywhere.
He is. He's everywhere. Yeah.
Hi, Beth.
Hi, Shanna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. I
Yeah,
feel like
you
it's
too.
been a
It's
long
been a
time.
while.
isn't this a fun bunch?
It
I
is a
know.
fun bunch. Yeah. Shanna,
Tracy,
I'm
you
going
met
down to
Beth?
DC. I'm going to DC next week to speak at Brookings on climate migration. It'd be kind of, I don't know if there's ever an interest in like reviving people who were interested in that topic before COVID happened.
Yes. We've been having a lot of conversations about this actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what, Beth? I'm going to follow up with you separately because I not only that, but just some other things about sort of your former. We're looking for some folks to talk about some of that and resiliency stuff, and I could use your input on it. So Lydia and I are going to out to you.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay,
I'll
sounds good.
sneak out of here and hopefully join maybe another future session. So bye.
Hi, Beth. Safe travels.
Thanks.
Tracy, have you met Beth before?
Mm-mm.
She lives in Ipsy. She was early, helped run the U of M Climate Center GLISA. It was Glacy, I think, at the time. And then
Mhm.
she ran the American Society of Adaptation Professionals. So she's been a real leader in climate adaptation and
Mhm.
was with a California consulting firm, helped write Resilient Washtenaw, and then Washtenaw County just hired her as the new director of the resilience
I
office to
heard that. Yeah, that's
implement the
exciting.
plan. So
Mhm.
comes full circle, and it's a great win for the county. So
Yeah.
all right, sorry folks to hear about more Washtenaw County small worldness, but great to have you back. Let me share my screen. And here we go. I think, again, we've got a small group, but I think, Nico, if there's anything as you've been talking with Marquette County about what they're already doing in any kind of sustainable purchasing, feel free to share it. Otherwise, we'll move to Washtenaw County. I know you're new, but let me know if there's anything you've learned about Marquette County so far.
Yeah, I had a chance to read through our purchasing policy, and I think that there was no current practices. I think there was one provision that allowed for local contractors to match if they were within a certain amount, but just a low bid process. Overall, pretty a lot of power to specific department heads. They have a decent amount of autonomy, so it's kind of a
Right.
distributed purchasing model. So that's kind of what I've learned over the last couple months.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just saw a bid go out and the evaluation criteria cost was only 10% of the points. So they were really focusing on who the team was, the ability to solve the community's problem, and only then were they going to be bringing in cost as weighing in on the ultimate decision. So, well, thanks for sharing that, Nico.
Nico's situation is probably more common.
Yeah.
But there's always more to do. I mean, there's plenty to do there, it sounds like, Nico.
Yep. Mary, Washtenaw County, just remind us, I think you've mentioned a few things that are already in place at the county.
Yeah, so we, in theory, we have a policy, and so, okay, from what I have gleaned with all of my like deep dives, into the sustainable purchasing landscape here, there is a policy, it's kind of, wrapped up within our I think it's like our environmentally sound operations policy. And there's like a sustainable purchasing, sustainable preference. I don't know what.
Environmentally preferable purchase.
Thank you. Yes, environmentally preferable purchasing, like section in that policy. And then there's like a couple other little, I'll call them like piecemeal clauses within other policies. But the extent to which this is enforced and implemented, I would say is very small / non-existent. Something though that we do is every year the purchasing department hosts a big like half day sort of retreat for purchasing end users. And the purchasing manager did invite me this year to talk a little bit about those policies / clauses and what people should be doing. So, I think that's a good start, that like to just kind of like get people aware of it. And actually, like after I presented at that meeting, I had a fair amount of response, like people emailing me saying that they wanted to learn more, were interested in like finding more sustainable products and stuff like that. So I think, there's interest. It's just like, to me, the scope of work is so large that it's like, and again, like some of these policies haven't even been updated since 2006, right? And so it's been like 20 years. And so I think like our whole system just needs a complete overhaul. And that's where, like I said, we're looking at getting a CLC fellow to kind of come in and, take the time to do that deep dive and revamp things, because I think there is interest there. It's just nobody has the time to own that project right now.
You are not alone.
Yeah.
You are not alone. And, we went a couple years before we finally got a stable purchasing person in place, who then surprised me by like writing it on his own and then putting it on my desk going, would you review this? And I was like, yes, happy to.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Sometimes you just go when the window opens. But yeah, no, that's great. And Tracy, anything you want to jump in on either of those?
No, I think I think that's great. I mean, it's exciting to see that a fellow might come in, that there's interest. So if you started the process of kind of revamping, first just collect what you've got and then figure out, okay, what needs to be updated and changed, that there's interest in it and some support for it is really great. So anyway, I think that's good. And we're just gonna next review some of the different steps that you can take, kind of beginner, intermediate, and advanced, that we had already shared with you, to just remind you that there's a bunch of things I think that you can do. So maybe I'll just dive into that before we then hear from everybody. So again, this is, a review of the material, and it's a list of possible actions from easier to kind of more involved. But it may make sense for you to start at an advanced activity. So, whatever, but this is kind of gives you a rough sense. But just sharing your existing policy, if you have one, or even a commitment with the public and in particular with existing vendors and include it in all bid documents is really just a good way to start the conversation. So just sticking it in there and saying, what's your reaction? So that's kind of a pretty no barriers first step, to start as some place to start. You can ask vendors about what sustainability attributes they already have in their current products. That's also very low barrier kind of activity to do. Some vendors already, like the big office supply companies, already can track your purchases for sustainability attributes that they track already. So that's a perfect example where you can ask them to track for you. So you can measure your progress and kind of begin to quantify an impact for your work without even having done, you're just showing what you're already purchasing and what the sustainability attributes of those are. So that's just a really good beginning step. And you can, build on existing policies that you have. And start, as you were saying, tweaking them, changing them, adding to them, updating them, or building on climate and waste and recycling commitments, because those commitments often require some sustainable purchasing action in order to make them happen. So using what you've already got to say, it would be really helpful to have some sustainable purchasing action here because to make this, these commitments happen. Next slide. A few intermediate things to do include, adopting a policy or updating, just as you were saying, Mary, updating the policy and Nico, to say some language about, health, protecting health in the environment. We have, proposed language, but having some kind of a policy or a resolution or even some kind of a commitment is a way that you can sustain and support the effort. So it really is an important thing to do. You can do plenty of things before you have the perfect policy. There's many of things. That's why we had a whole, slide set of things that you could do. But it does really help to work on some kind of a policy and have some language in there that allows you to do the work. Asking vendors to address whether they meet your sustainable purchasing policy or commitment is good. So it's not that they have to meet it, but just beginning to say, okay, here's our policy. Do you meet it? So that's not making purchasing decisions based on it, but again, beginning to inform vendors about your policy. You can require them to do all sorts of things, including disclose sustainability attributes. Another kind of in the mid-range thing to do is to specify third-party certified products in product categories where certifications exist, like in cleaning chemicals. There's so many places that are doing that already. It's a pretty, relatively easier step to do. Lots of cities are saving money doing it because so many of the green cleaning products are they're concentrated, and so they actually cost less over time. You can also start with a few high profile or high priority product categories, or look at low hanging fruit. Like, is there a product category? So start with just some or one, and then, identify safer alternatives. You can pilot alternatives, first, and then do them citywide. But just start somewhere on some product category where you think you can actually make change. So you don't have to do them all, starting somewhere. You can do additional requirements around existing specifications. If it already says recycled, you can begin to add some additional things there. And then participating in cooperative purchasing agreements. Those may help lower prices for you and identify greener products. So sometimes there are these cooperative purchasing agreements with the state or other cities. And then last slide, finally, just a few advanced actions. Adopt a set of sustainability criteria for priority products. So not just choose a few, but then say this is what we actually want to achieve over time. The goal is to create specifications for almost everything that you buy over time, but you have to start somewhere. So you start in, some priority product category. Developing metrics and benchmarks to track your efforts, awarding points to sustainability. Um, cost was only 10%. I hope sustainability was in there for some percentage, but awarding points for sustainability and then considering that information when you make decisions. Kind of the most advanced is like requiring vendors to reformulate products or changing vendors, because they're not able to meet your requirements. So those are just a few examples. There are many, many, many others, but just to give you a sense, there are other places to start too. It's also good to remember that it's a journey, and that the most important thing we want to communicate to you again is just to start somewhere, because then, you can build on your efforts and build momentum over time. So that's it on that, Matt.
Awesome. So we've covered a lot of ground and hopefully shared a few things to make your life easier. I mean, that's what I generally try and tell people is, if it was easy, we'd already do it, but it can be, you're not reinventing the wheel. A lot of other communities have gone through this process. And so, I think I look at our job is to kind of help hand you, here's a draft policy, here's some things that are, if you think you know how to make it work in your community. So I think what we want to do now is, I mean, again, it's a small group, talk about what is your first step? What do you think you might try and get done in, Mary's given us a nice 9 months window. Thoughts on how you're crafting your path forward, how it might look. And then, just if you have local allies and partners. I think, Mary, it was in good impromptu that we had Beth Gibbons show up at the behind Kim, because Washtenaw County has a new plan. It's 2 years old, but it speaks directly to sustainable purchasing as part of the Resilient Washtenaw Plan. So getting it in a plan and being able to point to it and say, hey, you approved this, we need to move forward on it, can give you some, it's one of the paths forward. So I'm going to stop talking and maybe Nico, let's talk about where you think Marquette is and how you can help move the ball forward there.
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned before, I've been working on drafting a climate action plan. Has kind of been my main thing the last couple of months, and this process has been going on now for maybe a year or two. And so there's been a decent amount of engagement, and I came in November, and I've been kind of working on the drafting step. And so we're kind of looking to, now that we have some drafted out goals and strategies, to begin the conversation and just talking about how we can kind of build these climate goals out and how they interact with some of these sustainable purchasing strategies that I think we've talked about. And so just kind of starting the conversation as this plan is moving along. Yeah, kind of where I'm at right now. And, as we talked about last time, Matt had provided some of that draft language, just trying to read through that and understand how that can be helpful in kind of drafting our own policy.
Yeah, and we would love any feedback from your colleagues as you look at that language, as you think about, well, this is the tone that we think is going to work best in Marquette, or, please remember to, or think about sharing that with us, because each time another community thinks about it, it gets better. So.
Yep, I think those have got some meetings and discussions lined up in the next few weeks. So we'll hopefully be getting more feedback on what form some of that language is best framed in. Yeah.
and we've got a slide in the end, but just a preview is keep in touch, just because we're finished with this official cohort.
But
this is something Tracy and I are going to be continuing to work on, and would be happy to, within reason, respond to emails, take a call, do things like that. So, thanks, Nico. Mary, Washtenaw County, what's the path forward?
Yeah, so I actually just scheduled office hours with you, Matt, and invited
I saw
Kim
that.
and Beth, both Beths actually, Beth uh, Gibbons
Yeah,
and Beth Ann Duffy, who's our purchasing manager,
nice.
to discuss, like I said, I'm really hopeful that we'll get a CLC fellow, but if we don't, I still would like this to be something that we try to tackle this year. I'm hoping, we can talk about like maybe during that those office hours, like flush out, yeah, what are our next steps? Like Tracy said, we need to gather all of what we currently have and kind of I think come up with a sort of step-by-step approach to updating all of these materials and getting them coalesced into one comprehensive document. And then from there, I think we need to start conversations with our purchasing end users, as they're called, the people who actually do the purchasing.
Do the work.
And I mean, I would love to say like jump right into training them, but I think even before that, we need to take a step back and have conversations around like, okay, what are the barriers from your perspective to getting more sustainable products, or like sourcing, like is sourcing an issue? Would it be helpful to have to build out through our Staples account, like a checkbox where you can, if you're interested in sustainable options, you check that box and then it only shows you those? Or is that something maybe that we don't even give them the option? Like that's all they see when they go into the
Right.
Staples. But I can definitely see some pushback there from folks. And so I think, we just need to like sit down and flesh out like how do we want to approach this? How prescriptive do we want to be? Who's going to enforce it? Who's going to own it? And like what I guess what are the next steps to kind of getting this moving or keeping it moving? I feel like I was going to say something else, but it left my head. So I'll just leave it there for now.
No, that's great. I mean, those are important, ways to get organized. The one thing I would add or just put in the mix is you could spend a lot of time kind of researching what are all the old, resolutions that the county's passed and things like that. And you may want to consider just we're adopting a new policy that supersedes all these other things, rather than putting a lot of time and energy trying to find things that nobody's paying attention to anyway, and just kind of you will decide whether you say we're going to take what Lansing did, we're going to take what Ann Arbor did, because both kind of build on this same model. It's always hit or miss whether, what's the best example to use. But that would just be my thought, is that,
Yeah.
Lansing just did this. We're going to use this as our starting point. Tell me if we've missed anything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I like that idea. I think that makes sense. to me. I think, I mean, there will be people who will say like, wait, we already did this, seems like just yesterday. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think we just have to be comfortable with saying like, it was actually 20 years ago. So we're just doing it again.
Well,
And,
doing
yeah.
it and again in a way that, it's going to be used.
Mhm.
It's a,
Mhm.
and that's where I think we also talked about this idea of how do you put it in Board of Commissioner resolutions so that every time they're spending money, they're pointing to how this decision supports sustainable purchasing,
Right.
because that's a policy that they've adopted.
Right. And I really like the idea. That was what I was going to say, of getting some boilerplate language into our contracts, with contractors. And I feel like, um, it's beneficial that I'm in the facilities department,
Right.
because that's where a lot of,
Mhm.
we do RFPs all the time. So, we have people, a lot of people who are very familiar with the contract language and who I think, would be supportive of getting that language in there and helping to ensure that we enforce that language with contractors.
Yeah, and remind people, like even Lansing's policy, which is pretty prescriptive,
Mhm.
gives an out,
Mhm.
any purchase, any, department head, nothing in the policy precludes you from making the right choice to buy the right product that the local government needs. It just, says you can't just do it without thinking about whether there's a better, smarter, greener, cheaper alternative.
Right.
So, um, and that's the other thing, is we generally have the right answer to all those, like, well, we can't do it because of this. And that's the other thing, that you're not alone, because every other government we've worked with starts with, well, we don't have staff to do this. We don't have, how do we train people? And this is why we're trying to get you to a point where hopefully in 9 months, when you're ready to go, we will have something that's a little more push, pull, click, click with
Mhm.
training for you. So that when somebody says, how are we going to train our 200 people that all have P cards? It's like,
Right.
well, the Ecology Center has this really nifty online, people can take it with a cup of coffee in their bathrobe if they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nico, Tracy, any other thoughts for our friends in Washtenaw County?
I don't think so, but I think you're right, Matt, that, I mean, if the policies that exist are like under like huge stacks of paper and no one looks at them, I'm not sure it makes sense to try and pull them up and, if for some reason they are useful, you've already done it, so then it makes the argument easier. That would be a reason, to pull them up or refer to them or whatever. But if not, I think Matt's right that, can just move forward with something. And as Matt said, we really want to help in whatever way we can. So, yeah. Okay, shall we shift then?
I
So
think so.
yeah. We're nearing the end of the session, so we want to reserve some time to get feedback from all of you. We've prepared a post-session survey, so we'd love to know how this went for you, how we could improve it. We want to take some time right now to fill out the survey. We want to be able to provide feedback to Michigan Green Communities and MML, and also to help us improve future sessions. So feel free to just be as honest as you want. It's no problem. All feedback is going to be useful to us. So did you put the link there?
I did just put that link in the chat if I did it right.
Fantastic.
I'm old, so you never know.
Yeah, I'll do it in a minute too. So I'll make it's there, but I'll put it in the chat too. There's about maybe 12 or 14 questions. Most of them are multiple choice. So you should be able to do it relatively quickly.
The link works. I did it.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. Well done, Matt. So go ahead and do that right now. Maybe we'll let us know when you're done, and then we'll close up and we'll give you some time back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt,
And
while we're waiting, while they do, did you want to say something to them about the survey?
no, I was just going to remind Lydia that we'll make sure this goes out to all of our, because we've
The
got
whole
4 or 5
cohort.
folks that couldn't make
Yeah.
today for some reason. So
It would be great
anyway,
if when that she could
yeah.
send it out with the, yep. Yep, that'd be great.
So what were you going to say, Tracy?
Well, I just saw the management team of your office yesterday.
Oh,
They were meeting in venue, and so it was funny to see all your bosses, walk out of a room. And anyway,
I'm going to be
we
there
talked
this
about you.
afternoon.
Yeah, they're having some kind of a staff meeting or something.
They're having a big board retreat now that they're an employee-owned company.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and they're going to do a happy hour. So the weather looks good. So I made head from here to Ann Arbor and then up north.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. So after this, we don't have too
Nope,
much.
a few more
content.
things.
Just a few more things. Yeah.
And it is sunny.
I know. So great.
The sun is amazing. So happy.
Sun makes all the difference.
So again, just let us know when you're through and
I finished the survey.
nice. Oh, good. All right. Well, thank you both. And I think Lydia, we're going to do one more reminder.
Yeah, one more reminder about the challenge. Don't forget to fill that out. I don't think I have to go through all of this again, but it's just here as a reminder, and it will be in the slides too.
So glad we could help you guys all get a few extra points.
Yeah, and just as a reminder on that, the deadline, do you want to talk about the dates for the challenge? Let me just, everybody has this fresh.
About the spring cohort?
Oh, but I was going to say at the MGC challenge, sorry.
Oh yeah, it's open now until May 1. So don't forget, and yeah, that will help you stay eligible to participate in the Accelerator Cohort and the Catalyst Leadership Circle if you're silver. And yeah, and then we have a short preview of the Spring Accelerator Cohort, which will be starting in March and run till June, and it will be covering resiliency planning. So we have some great speakers lined up, and the invites will be going out soon, hopefully by the end of this week. So stay tuned for those and hope to see you there.
Very cool and timely topic. So with that, a reminder, Mary signed up for office hours. Nico and I have spoken. Nico, if there's anything else as you guys get through that language, just feel free to reach out. And you guys all have our emails. So just know that Tracy and I would love to stay in touch and follow you in this journey. And so even if that's a year from now, you can assume that we will still be plugging away, working with communities, trying to help them along. And we've learned a lot from you during this process. So thank you for being open and sharing the kind of good, bad, and like, boy, we've got a lot of stuff out here and it's not organized and we don't really use the stuff we've already put in place. So it's good for us to hear. So just know that we welcome you reaching out to us if something comes up. So Tracy, anything you want to add there?
No, just thanks so much. I think you said it well, Matt. It has been great to work with everybody and also to just learn about what it is on the ground and what you're facing. And as Mary was saying, kind of understanding barriers and, issues associated with actually making this happen in the real world is really important to know and respond to so we can be effective. So it's been great. So
And
thanks.
I mean it, within reason. And Nico, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to Marquette in February, but if you pick a really nice time of the year for us to come up north and you need somebody to talk to the county commission, reach out. We'll definitely figure out if there's a way we can be helpful. Because sometimes it's good to have another face directly in front of the decision makers. And again, happy to see if there's any way we can be helpful. So with that, I want to thank you all and really, again, appreciate the time you've put in, and hopefully this has been useful and kind of we'd love any feedback you've got on ways to improve this, because there's a good chance we're going to do this again, possibly in some other states, or, down the road, do it again for other green community cohorts or, other communities in Michigan. So it's just really been helpful. So thank you. Lydia, Shanna,
Thank
any
you.
final words?
I just want to thank you guys. Thank you for all your great expertise on this. And Just very hands-on, open, ask us anything, talk through anything. And I hope, just reiterate, I hope folks take advantage of that and, continue to reach out to you if needed. But you guys have been great. Thank you.
And
Yeah,
thanks,
thank you.
Lydia, for
Really
keeping us
appreciate it.
all organized.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
660.
Thank you very much. It's been very helpful.
See you all soon. Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good
Good.
Bye
one.
all.
Good luck all. Happy
Bye-bye.
New Year.
You too.